Story 2. The basement window. I was 22 when this happened. At the time, I had just moved out of my parents' house into my first real place on my own. I was still in college and working a part-time job, so I couldn't afford anything nice. The only place in my budget was a basement apartment just outside the city. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't glamorous. The ceilings were low. The walls were that cheap white paint landlords used to hide everything, and the only windows were small ground-level ones that looked out at the base of the parking lot and the grass above. From the outside, you'd barely know the unit was there at all. I remember telling myself it was temporary. I figured 6 months, maybe a year, then I'd move into something better once I got more stable financially. The first few weeks were fine. I liked the independence, even if the basement was a little musty. But it didn't take long for the place to start feeling off. See, there's something about living underground that makes you feel cut off. When the blinds are drawn, it's pitch black, no matter the time of day. And when they're open, you don't really see much of the world, just people's feet as they walk by, or cars pulling into the lot. It was lonely in a way I hadn't expected. This story happened in mid-October, on one of the first really cold nights of the year. I'd stayed up late studying, hunched over my desk in the little living room. Around 2 a.m., I decided to finally go to bed. I shut off my lamp, brushed my teeth, and crawled into bed with my phone. That's when I first heard it, a faint scratching noise coming from the window above my bed. At first, I told myself it was probably branches moving in the wind, or maybe an animal, but there weren't any trees close enough to hit the glass. And the sound wasn't random, it was steady, deliberate, like metal scraping against the frame. I froze, my phone still in my hand, and listened harder. The sound grew more distinct, like someone carefully trying to pry something open. Then, before I could process it, a shadow passed across the thin line of moonlight at the edge of the blinds. I felt my stomach drop. Someone was outside that tiny basement window. I slowly reached up and tilted one of the blinds with my finger. What I saw still makes my skin crawl. A hand. A pale hand pressed flat against the glass. The fingers spread wide. Whoever it belonged to was crouched low, their face almost level with the window. When my eyes adjusted, I realized they were staring right at me. For a split second, we locked eyes. His face was gaunt, his skin looked almost gray in the moonlight, and his eyes were wide and unblinking. When he realized I could see him, he grinned a slow, unsettling grin that made my blood run cold. I yanked the blinds shut so hard they nearly snapped. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped my phone. I immediately dialed 911, whispering frantically to the operator that someone was at my window trying to get in. While I was on the phone, the scraping started again, louder this time, more urgent. I heard the window rattling in its frame, as if he was trying to force it open with something. I remember backing up against the opposite wall of my room, clutching the phone, and trying not to cry as the operator told me to stay calm, stay on the line, and that police were on their way. At one point, I swear, I heard him whisper something, a low, muffled voice through the glass, but I couldn't make out the words. Then came 3 hard bangs on the window so loud I thought the glass would shatter. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but was probably only minutes, I heard sirens in the distance. The sound made the banging stop. For a few seconds, everything went silent. Then I heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel, fast and retreating. He was gone. 2 officers arrived within minutes, and I met them at the door, nearly shaken out of my skin. They checked the window and found clear scratch marks on the frame, as if he'd been using a screwdriver or knife to try and pry it open. The dirt outside was scuffed, showing where he'd been crouching. They searched the area, but didn't find him. All they could tell me was that he was probably gone, and I should stay somewhere else for the night. I ended up crashing on a friend's couch, but I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was that face in the window, those wide, unblinking eyes, and that awful grin. The next day, when I came back with my friend, we found more evidence. Someone had left deep smudges on the glass, oily prints, where both hands had been pressed against it. There were also scratches on 2 other windows around the apartment, like he'd been circling, checking for a way in. I moved out 2 weeks later. Broke my lease. Lost my deposit tie. Didn't care. There was no way I could keep living in that basement, knowing that at any time someone could crouch outside and watch me through those ground-level windows. To this day, I don't know who he was or what he wanted. The police never caught anyone, and I never saw his face again. But every now and then, late at night, I'll be lying in bed, and I'll swear I hear that faint scraping sound again. And I'll remember how close he was just a single pane of glass away from being in the room with me.